Okay, good evening. This is our lesson basis, unless we change it. Building your house. And this is a...
No, that's what they're doing.
Okay. Just soon do that other one. So we've all heard, most of us have heard of this parable of Jesus in Matthew 7, and it's a short one. It's a very short parable, but some parables are pretty short. And it's a familiar one. We teach our children this. You can remember it if you've gone to Bible class as a child, or maybe heard a sermon. The notion of building your house on a rock versus sand, and Jesus recites it pretty quickly. So we'll go through it, and I do. I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to do a lot of my work using the NIV, the New International Version, and it has its problems and issues, I guess, but I like the wording in it most of the time. Particularly I've enjoyed studying the Old Testament using the NIV. It seems to help me kind of get into the message a little more clearly and quickly. So, but nothing against any of the other versions. If you prefer those, that's fine. So let's read that passage. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. And so I like to look at this. You know me, I like to look in context. Let's look at the whole array of discussion that Jesus is into here, at least what we've been given from the scriptures. You know, we may not have all of what he said, but we have context of some of. And Matthew 7 covers some interesting things as we try to unravel, the meaning of this, because it may mean more than we thought it did. Maybe we'll learn something. But in Matthew 7, the first he covers judging others in 1 through 5, and then a very interesting one is verse 6, where he talks about, after he spends several verses talking about don't judge others unless you take the mote out of your own eye and things like that. Then the next verse 6, he talks about judging others. Jesus is really good at that. Because he calls on you to judge people and condemn some of them as swine. Right after he says don't judge others. Because judge with discernment and be careful how you who you preach to and how you make yourself vulnerable, because some people will actually turn again and rend you, and like as if they were swine. So there's a paradox there. It's interesting to study. And then in verse 7 and 8, he talks about your decision to follow in his ways is going to require asking and seeking and knocking, effort on your part to be faithful in his paradigm, if you will. If you want to seek Jesus and follow him, it's not going to be quite as simple and easy as you think. It's going to take some effort on your part. And then God, verses 9 through 12, God giving you good gifts And then in verses 13, 14, he's back to this notion of narrow versus wide gates, the easy path versus the difficult path. And I'm just giving you these subjects he's talking about so you'll know this parable maybe in a little context. And then he goes into sure enough, verses 15, 20, knowing a tree by its fruits. Again, the effort you make in life, the way you live your life is going to produce certain fruit. There's going to be a product of your work, your daily activities, of your struggle, of your effort you're making to follow God's ways. Again, a tree by its fruits, the production of fruit, your fruit, your good fruits, your works, you're known by them. And then kind of culminates in verses 21 through 23, where he depicts a judgment scene. Jesus does. And he says, oh, by the way, you don't follow me by just saying, Lord, Lord, and glorifying me. There's an expectation of doing his will. It's not just proclaiming that you believe in him. He expects you to follow him. He expects you to do something different with your life than what is easy. He expects some effort from you. And so in that context, in that stream of things he's been talking about, there's this theme of your effort in life, your choices you make, the things you do are important to Jesus. Yes, he wants you to love him and have a relationship with him, but that relationship flourishes on your effort to serve him. And I like to liken it, and I don't know anything about this, not been in the military, but in the military, the guys that go through battles and are scarred together and save each other at different times and serve each other, they're a band of brothers. They're very close knit group, and it doesn't even take that level of stress. Sometimes you work on a big project together, and there's struggles and difficulties and tasks and uncomfortable things, and you got to overcome reversals and things that happen. Those people grow together. So as you work with your fellow Christians and do things in God's service, that will draw you together, but also draws you closer to Jesus as you've endured things for him. It hasn't always been the easy path. You've taken the difficult times. You've been criticized. You've been persecuted. You've suffered for his cause. Then your closeness and what they like to call your relationship to Jesus, it must grow from that effort. I think it does. So I think that's the context in which he pronounces this very short parable. And in verses 28, 29, the crowd is amazed as he taught with authority, which is different than what they were used to hearing from the leadership and the teachers of the law. The teachers of the law were very concerned about getting it right, and they were very careful to be almost legally, we call it legalistic, very careful to get everything just right. And Jesus knows that their teaching is contrasted with his, was he's talking about big principles. He's talking about bigger issues than how far you can walk on a Sabbath day. He's concerned with their hearts and with their mindset of their lives and the tenor of their lives and true honesty in living. So those are the things we saw in chapter 7, them talking about the concepts they covered. He talked about in that part of his sermon. And so we come to the notion of, okay, what's he mean by the foundation was sand or rock? Well, we know as we look at Jesus' background as he worked on the earth was we don't know exactly what carpenter meant. We think it may have meant more than building just, houses or things. They may have even had skill sets where he built furniture and things like that. But it was a craft skill that he knew a lot about foundations and houses and things, and everybody also knew it. Everybody knew you couldn't build a house on sand, that it would wash out and it would crash. And maybe somebody had tried that, and it was familiar with some of the people in the area. They knew about some people that didn't pay attention enough to their foundation and they were building. So, but between the two, he contrasts the two builders, and we know that the foundations were different, but the effort they put in was about the same to build the houses. There's nothing contrasted between the two houses, the quality of the house itself, or the effort or the expense that went into building the house. There's nothing. It was about the same. The materials of the houses are probably about the same. The wind and the rain, the assault by the wind and the rain is about the same. Life's assault on the things that happen to you in life are going to be maybe pretty close to the same between the Christian and the non-Christian, the follower. But the difference is the foundation. And that's the only difference. It's called out in this contrast, in this parable. Just that one difference, the foundation. So, discussing that, and we've heard this parable discussed a lot of times, and I have too, and it's usually brought up as the contrast is the truthful doctrine of Christ versus false doctrines. As one avenue you can look at this, you can say, well, there are false doctrines. You don't want to build your life on these false doctrines. They can be dangerous and they can fall away from you. And those are very, very true applications, I think. It's also known that there's a certain feeling of security that comes in your life. And it's a spiritual security. It's not necessarily a financial security or a security from persecution or anything. But there's a certain security in your heart that comes knowing that you've done your best to base your life and your choices in life based on Jesus' teaching. Not transient things, not materialism, not vain pride, not the glory of man, not riches, or not all the other things that are so easy to get caught up in and base your decisions on. You've looked really hard at the things you've had to do, and it's not that you don't want riches or you don't want honor, but you've had to make discerning decisions sometimes that maybe weren't the highest dollar reward. Or maybe there were other things you had to sacrifice because you just couldn't do that. And so Jesus offers this serenity in the time of storm, is that you've made your choices on things that don't change, that God doesn't change, His will doesn't change. And we've been able to go through the storm, or what storms we've had, knowing that we've tried to base our life on His precepts and principles. It might not have been perfect, might have made some mistakes, might have made some stupid mistakes. But the discernment was there, the effort was there, and we were trying to do the right thing. And I think that's the storm of life that you get. If you build your foundation on something else, you never know what's going to happen that knock the legs out from under it one day, and you'll be surprised. So God says, try your best. Jesus says, follow me. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a little more difficult. There's going to be some easy, nice things you may have to forego because they don't fit in Jesus' moral plan or Jesus' notion of what's right and wrong, and we're trying to follow his notion, not our own. So, what else do we know about that? James says that a double-minded man, I used to have trouble understanding that passage. Unstable and double-minded people are driven and tossed by the sea, and as you get older, you begin to understand maybe what they're talking about, that there are people that seem to be playing both ends against the middle. And they want to be here doing this right thing, but they got some money in the kitty over here, on doing something else, and so they're playing this thing, and you can see that, and that's their call. They'll answer for that if it's right or if it's wrong. They'll answer for it. Jesus says, this is James writing that, and James is who? The one that wrote James. Who's that? Jesus' physical brother through Mary. Okay. Grew up with Jesus there, okay? Grew up in a austere lifestyle. Not a lot of money in that household. It was probably tough, probably difficult. Remember growing up in Judea at the time of Jesus, what was it like? Just offhand, have you seen some pictures of Israel? You know what I remember about some of those pictures? I mean, I'm just simple-minded. I just look at it, it's just rocks. There are some fertile areas, but there's a lot of barren, rough, deserty-looking territory there. There are places near the Jordan River that are utterly beautiful, but there's a lot of tough land. It's hard. And in Jesus' time, remember what had happened. They had rebelled against God. Who came? Well, God sent Babylonians to wipe them out, and then so they've been assaulted, and they were brought into captivity. And so what happened when the Jews were in captivity? The land was reoccupied by other folks. Okay? So maybe they were tribe of Judah, but that doesn't mean anything, because when they finally get out of captivity and come back, they don't own the land. They don't have this land of inheritance that God had promised them. There's other folks own that land. You can't have it back. So what did the Jews do? Some of them were wealthy enough to maybe buy some of the land back, but a lot of these Jews are poor, and they're reduced to poverty, and they're workers in a land that they don't own much of the property anymore. Remember, they had that inheritance. Ephraim, they all had their little land, and they were supposed to inherit it forever and keep the land in their families. Well, that all just was destroyed when they left. They came back, they're in the land, but they can't always possess the best parts of it like they want to. So they're sort of remanded to just be, craftsmen and workers, laborers. They buy some of the land back, but it's not like God had planned for them, to have this rich land that flowed with milk and honey and have their inheritance set up. Have all the vineyards and all the fields of barley and all that. They didn't always have a lot of that. They had, some of them had some of it, but there was a lot of poverty in the area in the time that Jesus grew up. So they're living together, and they see people that compromise with the Romans and all this and get financial gain from it. And most of the Jews are bitter against those guys, and some of them become tax collectors, as they can cut a deal with the Romans and become a tax collector and make some money. Well, Matthew was one of those. Jesus called him. So Jesus didn't rule against those people who'd done that, because they could be honorable in those professions, okay? But when you're double-minded, it means you're just playing both sides, trying to see how to win. Christ is our anchor in times of doubt and trial in Acts 16:25 through 44. That's the scene where Paul and Silas are in the Philippian jail, and they're singing. They've just been, beaten and thrown in jail, and now they're singing hymns. And it's so powerful that the jailer, is converted when the angel opens the gates and they don't leave, and the jailer gets converted because he's already been impressed with these people. But God gave them a serenity in time of that persecution, a trouble that was very powerful, and there was nothing like it that these Romans had ever seen. They knew people that worshiped different idols and things, and they never really impressed them much. But these guys had been beaten for their cause, and they show no hatred toward their persecutors. They're just forgiving, and they never see anything like it. So, it was that foundation of Jesus' example of suffering for us that was in their minds as they started singing and praising God. So, but I want to look at, so that's basically what we think of, those kind of thoughts and those concepts when we think of this passage. But I saw something else in this passage that I thought I'd go ahead and share when I was trying to study it, and that it mentions specifically a concept that I had kind of overlooked, and it's similar to what we're talking about, but a little different, is that the foundation is, in a way, the way Jesus words it, the foundation he's talking about is not so much a particular strain of doctrine or something. The foundation is your choosing to serve Jesus. And the way he puts it is kind of clear. He says, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man. And then as contrast, he says, but everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like the foolish man. So what are you saying that's different? Well, it's saying that Jesus, and then in context of all these other things that went before it in chapter 7, where he's talking about your life and your choices and your willingness to serve him, and your willingness to seek and to knock and to ask, and your willingness to serve him in spite of other things that are happening in your life. Your choice to serve him is the rock. That is the foundation that he's talking about, is you choosing deliberately to put yourself in God's service versus just ignoring his teachings and going on about your business. So it's that choice in your life that's the foundation. Yeah, you could say that his word is the foundation, but the way he describes it here, it is your choice to serve him that is the rock. And he says it real clearly. I kind of overlooked it for a lot of years. It says, those who put my words into practice, they are the wise builder. And those who ignore my words, they're the foolish builder. So your choice to serve Jesus is the big difference between these two builders. You're going to serve him or you're not. Jesus said that multiple times, that you can't serve God and mammon. You got to make this choice. You make the choice, and then you're the wise builder if you choose Jesus. So it's not inconsistent with context. It's choosing the narrow way, like he says, seeking, knocking, bearing fruit. It's all about your choice. Are you going to be a wise builder and choose to follow him, even when it's tough, when it's inconvenient, and it's not financially profitable, maybe? I remember years ago I was looking at these investment funds and listening to some of these guys that kind of promote certain funds or others. And one of the things I noticed about those guys, and nothing against them, but what they would invest in was immaterial of what that thing was. It didn't matter what it represented. They were just looking at the financial profitability of it. So it could be, a big lucrative cigarette company. And didn't matter. It could be a distillery company. Didn't matter. It could be a gaming outfit that had all kind of casinos and junk going on. They didn't care. They just were looking at the profitability of it. Immaterial of all that, what they were doing. They didn't give a hoot about what they're doing. And I found that interesting that they're just purists in financial sense. They got no cares about what they're doing. They could be bringing in fentanyl. They didn't care. As long as it was legal somehow, they could get it. Good. Taking the money. So it's kind of humorous for me to look at that and say, these guys do not care at all about what they're doing. And so their choice they made was, it's just money. Forget all those other scruples or whatever you got something against. They would laugh at you if you brought that up. What about this? Well, forget that. Here's where the money is. So it's kind of humorous, but you see it all. And I taught a college class for a little while, and I would tell the college kids, I said, you get out of the college, and you're grown up. You got to make decisions. And your decision is going to go with you the rest of your life. And I would bring up, now, if you're going to college to be a medical doctor, when you get out, you got a choice. You're going to have to stand up for your principles or not. I said, there's hospitals you can go to work for and practices, maybe where they do abortion. And they might pay you twice as much as this job in this little country hospital where they don't do abortions. And they may promise you don't have to do abortions. If you don't want to, that's fine. Come on and work with us. It's fine. We won't make you do the abortions. And then one day, Joe Blow doctor is absent. He's on vacation. And you're called in to just help with that abortion. You don't have to do it, just help. And then you get there, and the guy that's supposed to be doing it, or the gal, they're gone. So you got to do it. And that big fancy car you got and that big townhome and all that you're paying for, you got to make a choice. So I said, these people will co-opt you into their systems, and you'll turn around twice and you'll be right big in the middle of it. You got to make some choices. And it may not always be, easy. Sometimes you got to say, well, what do I want to be doing? What do I want to be found doing when the Lord returns? Okay? Almost everything's okay. But there are a few things that Christians got to be real careful about, especially if you're making a volitional choice and you got a lot of other choices. If you're starving to death and, the Babylonians taking over or something, I don't know. But if you got a volitional choice in the United States of America to do something, you might ought to look real hard at the choice to be sure you're doing what God has approved in His Word. And it's not. I advocate it's not always easy. Sometimes you got to do things that don't look. They're counterintuitive. The people of the world say, "Why are you giving that opportunity up?" Well, because I got to help with this, and I can't do that. And so you can make your stand and take your make your choices. But I think the foolish versus the wise was about your choice. and to choose God's will or not. And I think the wisdom and victory is in making the commitment to actually live according to Jesus' teachings and paying attention to what he said, and remembering you can't be double-minded. And don't think that it's going to be one of these deals like the TV preachers or radio or whatever, put your hand on the radio, say, Lord, Lord, whatever it might be. Jesus says you got to commit to me, and you're going to have to do some stuff. It's not going to be just mental assent that he is Lord. That's part of it, but then that out of that flows a difference in your life. You're going to have to change some things. You're going to have to serve him. It's not going to be the same old things. And so be careful about those who offer too great and rosy a picture for latching on to the Lord. There's a story I heard. I almost hesitate to recite it because I don't know how accurate it is, but take it for what it's worth. That they say back along about 300 A.D. when the Romans, right before Constantine declares a stop to, as Roman becomes Roman emperor, and he declares a cease to the persecution of Christians. In that last era and phase of persecution, last 20 years or whatever it is, the Romans are getting very sophisticated in how they're still persecuting Christians very violently, but they've become more sophisticated in it. And one of the things they say they were doing is they were trying to persecute the leadership. So you think about 300 A.D., and they say that this guy Nicholas was offered. They needed a bishop back as, the church was changing. It was just about to go apostate into all kind of things. But they got traveling bishops or elders that will cover an area. And they said that nobody would become a bishop or an elder because the Romans would get a hold of it and kill you. So it was just, they needed somebody to help these churches and go out there and be kind of a halfway evangelist, halfway bishop, and help these little struggling churches and go visit them and kind of on a circuit. And they said Nicholas didn't want to do it because everybody that got named an elder would get persecuted by the Romans. They'd find out who you were and kill you, or put you in prison and torture you and eventually kill you. So nobody wanted to be an elder. And so I was laughing about that we got problems getting people to step up to different offices in the church now, but nobody's threatening to kill you, but he didn't want to do that. So finally they said he took the office. And sure enough, he got arrested. And sure enough, they're going to kill him. And then about that time, Constantine held, supposedly that's when he issued that decree and stopped all that. And so he just missed. So the word is he just missed getting executed because he didn't really want to do that because that was a death sentence to declare your faith at that level. Wisdom and victory is making a commitment, actually live according to his teachings, doing his will, versus just saying, Lord, Lord, and those who actually follow him are rewarded, and those who do not will fall in the end. Choose to follow him, and you can go through the storm in peace. And the world won't understand your peace, but other Christian brothers and sisters will. So that's the lesson, and I apologize for the simplicity of it all. Kind of simple-minded. If you got any questions, you want to discuss that or comments, comment. You with the beard back there.
I think it's pretty interesting everything that parable love kind of little itty-bitty, songs and stuff, so really ingrained in everybody. But it wasn't just the foundation that's different. The builders are different. The effort required to build on stone is magnifold higher than it I imagine that was the same way Christ had, built houses back in his day. And on a barrel side, hey, I don't want to spend that effort. I'm just going to build it right over here on the sand, nice, easy peasy. Sand right there on the beach is already flat as a pancake. I can lay my timbers right there and rock and roll. Slap it up in no time flat. There are people in the church that he's addressing here that, hey, they're building, thinking they're building on the correct structure, but they're not putting forth the effort. So maybe they're going down the broad way. Hey, everybody else is going down this way, must be the right way to go, instead of the narrow. Maybe they're going, not bearing good fruit. Hey, your tree might not be healthy enough. But it's all this effort. It takes effort to prune the tree. It takes effort to fertilize. So all these things are a matter of the effort we put forth. And every single one of those parables he uses. And so that builder and everything needs to put forth the effort to build that house on the rock.
Good comment. Anybody else got some comments?
I'll throw something in there.
Yeah.
Along those lines, talking about going back at the context, you realize back in 21 and 22, those verses, that these people were doing good things. I mean, if you think about it, they're casting out demons and they're performing miracles, prophesying. So what they were doing, bell always rings when I talk. But they're doing good things, but when Jesus comes back around in 24, he reminds them that it's not just about doing good things. It's not just about going to church. It's not just about, we can all do good things and make ourselves feel like we are doing good work for God. But underneath that, he says, is the real foundation. What do you may go to church on Sundays and Sunday nights and Wednesday nights and even here in VBS, and yet underlying that, your life is in ruins because it's not really, your life that you're building is not really dedicated to Christ. So the good works and all that stuff so it kind of works its way back. The fruit's good, the tree not so good, let's get back to the roots. And when you look at the roots and the foundation, that's when you start seeing the problems with that people are experiencing. Looks good on the surface, but even these guys, he says, go away, I never knew you because you practice lawlessness. They're going, no, I don't. Look at all these good things I'm doing. But he says, no, let's go a step further and look at the foundation of your life, and that is a life of lawlessness.
Good comment.
Right now, just say that, you were talking about in Jesus' time how Jerusalem and all that looked, the rocks and the not barren, basically. But before that, when we read the Old Testament, there was lions, there was bears, there were all kinds of these animals that go into like brush, into big, thick, nice, lush areas. So to me, I can look back and say at one time, this area was lush, beautiful, and all that, and then look at it today. That to me proves that God was like, okay, I'm tired of it. Y'all didn't keep my commandments, and so.
I don't know. There's a lot of fertile areas. Don't get me wrong there, but I mean, if you just look up, there's a lot of tough land too. It's just
Because like
it's on a mountain. Yeah.
Elisha, when the bear came out, and the she bear came out and ate the
Yeah.
kids, or the prophet, whenever he went back, he was eaten by a lion.
Yeah.
So we know that they were there.
Yeah.
So.
It dawned on me that when they came back from Babylonian captivity and other captivities, they didn't always get the land. Other people were there. That's why I hated the Samaritans and all these other folks that got their land. And they had power over them. And, then the Romans are enforcing the law, so you can't really steal it, So that's one of the reasons they always wanted Jesus to throw off Roman yoke so we can come back into all our inheritance and everything. And, and to your point about doing good works, it's a good point. There's we took our kids to Harding, and as you turn on that highway out of Little Rock, and you turn on right and go on that highway up to Harding, there's one of the biggest churches I've ever seen in my life. That thing is huge. And And I looked at that, and I said, look how big a church. And you go a little ways, and there's a bigger one. And there's like humongous church. I mean, it's like a big columns and structure. And I said, look how, I wonder who that is. And I was trying to guess the denomination, who that is. Who is that? Somebody put a lot of effort into that, and a lot of money and struggle and time build those things. And I forget who they were. I won't call their name, but, a lot of effort goes into a lot of things. And you got to wonder, well, is it approved by God? Are we trying to follow Him, or are we just in self-aggrandizement? Are we just building something big? And you look around at the church, work at the church. There's stuff you can do supporting ministry, teaching people, Bible studies, doing all kinds of things. There's a lot of stuff you can do for the Lord that doesn't get any attention at all. Almost nobody knows all this work's going on, unless you happen to be involved. So those guys are really working, and the ladies are working, and there's a lot of work going on the scene. And where are they? They're not doing it for the the acknowledgement by other people. They're doing it either for the kids or for, they're doing it for the Lord. And you'll see that out in your job and everywhere else. You'll see people they'll do the big show stuff that gets the attention, and then the blood, guts, and feathers goes undone. And the stuff that somebody else has to do, that let them. So the showboats and stuff. You'll see them getting all kind of attention. And so that you can tell who's working for the Lord, sometimes, and maybe who's working for themselves, and finding that scripture that defines what they want to do, and then doing that. So you'll see that. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I know I've seen a variety of folks working at things, and you just wonder, is the Lord going to be approving us is what we do. So we have to really stay tuned in to our choice to serve God, not ourselves. Serve God. Be careful. And that's your lesson. Thank you.